Yes, the train ran. Yeah, we used to go play with wooden trees, remember the platforms?
Yep.
With all the splinters on it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Pretty rough.
Yeah.
Was the town the same size?
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
I think there was
The same size.
Plus or
a lot
minus.
less people, I think.
Less people, right? Yeah, because we don't have the houses now, the outskirts of, we don't have none of that.
And Sylvia, the roller rink, the skating rink behind the Catholic church.
Yeah, I told them
We
about
played
that.
about that. Did you
Yes.
roller skate there?
Yes.
Well, what's the deal with Patagonian skating rinks? Because Katie Hall was a skating rink too.
They use that as that. And also the opera house.
The Opera House.
Was a skating rink?
They would use it, not, special days. 10 cents to rent your skates and then 10 cents to skate. That's according to my mom.
And it was a metal
It
stage
was
with keys,
the
right?
Catholic priest, Father Kistler.
Yeah,
Was
Father
the one that made
Kistler.
that ring, because he wanted the kids to really enjoy it and everything
That was the one at the church.
behind it.
Daddy did the
He's
ring.
also the one that arranged to have that, the airplane.
The
put
airplane.
Right,
there.
the
The airplane was
airplane.
put there, was there many years, had all the motors out of it, you could crawl through it, had
Mhm.
ladders everywhere. I don't know why they took it out.
I know.
It wasn't, I guess, liability-wise now, but it was the most fun thing there ever was.
It was.
Yes, it was.
Bobby Lennon told me that it was, they got it from the boneyard at Davis Mountain. And he has the altimeter, as a matter of fact, of that airplane. And he said that it came from Vermont or Connecticut and they wanted it back. So that's how it goes. And Father Titzler would charge for movies, when he was raising money to
Right.
bring the airplane down here. It was 10 cents a person to go in and watch a movie, and he did it for a long time until they got enough money to bring that airplane down to Patagonia.
There was a second building too, not where the church is
The
now.
second building.
There was a second building, and everything, the movies and everything were done in that building.
There was next to the church that's there now.
Right.
It wasn't there then, but there was a wooden building, the church building there, and that's where we would go to mass, and that's where Father Titzler was, he was our priest there. Who, by the way, left Patagonia and got married.
Yeah, he did. He moved to Bisbee and married at some.
Good for him.
Very sweet, good for him, and he also married my parents. My parents were married in 1948, May 1st, actually, just a couple days ago, and by Judge Farley at the courthouse. And on their way back after their wedding at the courthouse, they stopped at a place called Bollinger Park, and you know where that is before you get to the Santito. And the Rivera family put together a big wedding luncheon for them. And that's where they had their lunch. And then years later, my parents lived behind the Catholic Church. And Father Kistler was always there having dinner with my parents, along with Carrie Montoya, who was the nurse, yeah, and her brother. Sometimes her brother would go over for dinner. And one time, my parents had just finished having dinner. They put Emma and me to bed, and Father Kistler said, "Carmen and Memo, you have to go with us to the Catholic Church right now. I have something to show you." So they went over, Mom in her apron, and they had Carrie Montoya and her brother, and they walked in, and he goes, "Okay, we're here, you're getting married. You have been living in sin, and you're going to be married." and he married them, and that's a funny story my dad says, but I'll save that for another more intimate time. But anyway, it was interesting how Father Kistler was always at our house and having dinner, and just decided they were going to get married that day, and it was several years later.
They were technically married before that.
Yes, they were married by El civil. You have the civil, and then you have the religious. So they were married civil, the civil.
what are we gonna call ourselves? That's one thing that I was just thinking about. We have different names, different suggestions, so we should probably throw it out to all of us and see what we should call ourselves. One of the things that was, what was the name that you folks came up with?
Jade came up with,
Jackie Hunt.
speaking of the post office wall, Jade came up with Living Treasures.
Living Treasures.
Treasures, which I thought was quite appropriate.
That's good. And
Want water?
I also have one too that's, how about our recuerdos? Our recuerdos, our memories.
Our memories.
That's another possibility. And if any of you have any ideas on what we could call ourselves, throw in the different things and maybe we can decide what we can call ourselves. All of them so far are good. I want to share something with you. A few weeks ago, we were here in the same room and we had Carl and Jane Bach. They're the ones that wrote these books. They're professionals and they live in Sonoya. And I just finished reading the book because I post-op. I was home for 9 days post-op and I finished the book and it was great. One of the things that I really got a kick out of is the way they described Patagonia in their book. So I highlighted it because it's pretty neat. It says, and this is the character that is on his way to Nogales. He is the deputy sheriff of Santa Cruz County that has his substation up in Sonoya in the book. And he's talking about Patagonia, and he says, in about 12 miles, I came to the town of Patagonia, a small population community with a mix of Hispanic, New Age, old hippie, rural redneck, and folks dressed up like cowboys who may not or may have been the real thing. There were some artists that lived there, along with other authors and escapees from white-collar urban America. That's the way I looked at Patagonia. And I think he did get it good. They did a good job. I would probably add cowboy families to that group too, because a lot of us here that are cowboy families. Many of us, well in my case, I'm 4th generation now of cowboy families here. Cindy has me beat. She is 5th generation because she just became a great grandmother.
No, just one great thing. One great.
She's got one great that's only 2.5 weeks old.
She's got 2 grades.
Got 2 greats.
2 grades, yeah. So anyway, I think that we've been here for a long time, many generations. I'm sure most of you here too share many generations of cowboy families. So anyway, it's a great read. It's fun. It's a fun read. I'm sure the library has it here. Check it out or buy it next time they come and talk to us. They are really good. It's the couple are professionals, retired, and they are in the Sonoya area. And it is Carl and Jane Bach.
What is the name of the book?
This one is Coronado's Trail, and I think they have at least three other books. I think it's a total of 4 books that they have. But it's the character, the main character is Cal Creed, and he is the deputy sheriff in the substation in Sonoya, and he's solving all kinds of mysteries. And it was a really fun read, a real good one. So enjoy if you can.
Well, I think we ought to seize the moment in terms of describing the town. I like Darcy Keeler's description. A little town that time forgot, decades cannot improve, where all the women are strong, the men are good looking, and the kids are all above it.
That's right. That was good.
Thank you for making that. That's wonderful.
Garrison Keeler in his red tennis shoes.
Right.
talking about cowboys, so I mentioned we moved out in 1958 when I was about 6, almost 7. But about a year or two after we moved, I used to write, I would write a letter to my dad's sister, Raquel, who was married to Jesus Heredia, who was a cowboy. So every summer for about 8 or 9 years, I would visit, I would live in Tucson during the school years, but I would always come out during the summer. First was to what is now the San Antonio ranch, but back then it was the Dede Ashburn. My uncle worked for foreman John Gates, was the boss. He was, I remember he was very regimented. Everything was registered and pastured, and it was. And my uncle didn't like it. He didn't like the regimentation. He eventually would go to work at the Sands over by the Whetstone Mountains, and then eventually ended up in Temporal Canyon for a long, long time working for Clay Howell in the Lazy Yard. So those were the best times of my life, walking, riding behind my Uncle Jesus, different horses, and just basically learning how to ride and rope. And I showed me how to shoe a horse, but I never did, shoe one. But I did some roping and did a lot of riding with my uncle. And the first job that I got was from my first wages I earned. One of the first wages I earned was from Clay Howell. We would ride in the morning we would ride and check on the cattle. And then one day, my uncle and I separated. I rode up Little Smith and he rode up Big Smith Canyon. And I noticed that one calf had not been castrated. So I reported that to my uncle, and then reported that to Clay, and then basically my uncle eventually we'd have to locate the calf again. But that's what earned me my first $15 from Clay Howell as a ranch hand.
And you didn't get hurt.
Well, there's another story. One time I came from Tucson. It was spring. We got Tucson, they have rodeo days during the last weekend in February, and there's also spring branding. So I took the bus as a 12-year-old on South 6th Avenue. I got on the Citizens Auto Stage, made it to Nogales, and then from Nogales transferred to Patagonia. The Citizens Auto Stage dropped me off where the gathering grounds is now. That was and my aunt and uncle came and picked me up, and it was 7 miles up to Temporal Road. And so it was spring branding, so I was all excited. I got to ride a horse called Pancho Villa, and he was a gray horse and a real good cutting horse, and he had more cattle sense than I did. And so we were out moving the cattle, and he went one way, and I didn't see the log in front of me, and so we got, branded, so to speak. But luckily there was a doctor in the cattle drive. Mr. Bell was the owner of the Lazy Yard. He was a auto dealer from back east somewhere, but he would bring all his friends, and they would all, round up. Basically, it was real easy to round up cattle. You just drove them down because they were, in the springtime, they move the cattle up. In the wintertime, they move the cattle up to the high ground, and in the spring, when they drop their calves, you just move them down, so it's really easy to drive them down. So we would drive them down to the ranch, the corrals there in Temporal Canyon. But anyway, that was Pancho Villa, and my first, injury that I had. Besides getting bucked off one time to another horse, but that's about the only times I got hurt. Who's next?
Any other questions? Oh, Chuck has a
Chuck.
question.
I've been curious at how this region used to work, because people were born out of the valley, Harshaw, Washington Camp, all these different, little villages, so to speak. How did the social world work? How did education work? Religious practices, you're all dispersed. It's not like today where everybody's in Patagonia. So how did it function back in the day, so to speak, when the mines were active? When ranching was really active.
There was a bunch
There's
of
a lot.
Well, I can, real quickly, I can answer, we had a mail carrier at the time, Glenn Lewis's wife. She was the mail carrier, and she kept everybody informed of what was going on. And if you needed a ride into town, my Uncle Manny would get a town, and if you needed something from town, she'd bring it out. That was one way that we stayed together, just with the postal service.
I was just thinking, growing up at the mining area, we would have competitions with other areas, like Washington Camp in Duquesne and in Harshaw and in Patagonia. The men would play each other's in softball games, and we'd always pick out a particular area and everybody would go and the women would cook and us children, we'd climb and scream and yell and ride our bicycles. And so we had a lot of friends that we made from all the other different small villagers that we kind of hung out with. So that was one way that we always kept communicating.
But then those bailes and Harshaw.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
So we need to tell about
The
that.
Harshaw dances.
Well, I was really little, but in Harshaw, actually it's right next to where that pig tree is. You know where the pig tree is?
Next to the cemetery.
Next to the cemetery in Harshaw. As a matter of fact, it's in the PRT. I saw it where Casina's talking about the tree, the hollow tree. Well, we call it the pig tree because the family that owned that area there would house a pig in there.
It was kind of hollowed out, sycamore.
That Casina had wrote about that in the
Right.
It's in the
PRT.
PRT.
Yeah, it's known as the pig tree
Yeah.
in Cochi, and actually the Medinas owned the pig, and they had a raffle, and everybody bought tickets to buy the pig, and then when they pulled out the name, Mr. Medina's brother won the pig, so the pig went back into the pig tree. But next to it, there was a flat area now, and you'll see if you go out there that Border Patrol is usually parked out there in a flat area. Okay, that was a dance hall that was owned by Laco and Alicia Beltran. Yeah. Alicia Ronquillo and she married Laco Beltran.
Yeah.
And they would hold dances there in the summertime. And that's how the communities came together. People from Patagonia and from Loquillo, Washington Camp, all of the areas would come to the dances there at Washington Camp.
Tucson, Nogales, you know.
Yeah, it seems like all Santa Cruz County.
Right.
Yeah.
They were really popular.
And good live music.
And it was
Yeah.
live music. That's right.
Yeah, and then out at the ranches like in Parker Canyon and the valley, every weekend, every rancher, not only the owners, but the cowboys and the people that lived there all the time, they would get together and have a potluck every weekend. And one weekend it would be at this ranch, the other weekend it'd be at the neighbor's ranch. And that's how we all commingled together kind of as ranchers. And then the famous thing as I was in high school was the Elgin dances in Elgin at the community center up there. And they had live bands up there too, and that was the place to go dance for sure.
Right.
And the fairgrounds too, huh?
Yeah, once in a while at the fairgrounds, after the rodeos and the races and whatnot, there would be a dance, definitely after the rodeo.
I just thought of the Harshaw dances. We actually would have live bands that would come from Nogales and play at the Harshaw dances. And then whenever, say a few hours into the dancing, they started packing their things up and getting ready to go, and that's when the hat would be offered. A hat would come out, and everybody would, all the men would put money into the hat to try to get the band to play for another hour or two.
That was encore.
Yes, and so they would do that. And that would happen at least twice more. So the band would probably end up playing like for 6 hours straight, but they still played. And then they would pack up and leave, and that's when my mom and dad would go to the car and take out their record player. They had this record player furniture thing that was huge. It was a blonde, I think it was Emerson or something like that, record player. And that mom would start spinning the records, and we would all continue dancing to Red Foley, to cowboy songs, corridas, all kinds of other music. So that was another thing. And then when everything got scratchy, Daddy would take out his knife and do something with the needle. I don't know what he would do. Yeah, sharpen the needle or something or other, but it would take him a few minutes, but he'd put it back in again, and there goes the music again.
I understand now, someone donated hundreds of LPs to the museum, and we didn't have anything, we picked out a few that had cool covers on them, but we didn't have any way to save, and purpose in saving all of them, and they asked for them. So Tom and I delivered like 12 boxes of LPs over. Now I understand why you're reliving,
There were 78s, you know, they were huge, huge, you know, one little itty bitty hole in the middle. And there were 78s, yeah, that was neat. So anyway, they would dance, the parents would all dance till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
And we kids were in the car.
Yeah.
They would load the car up with blankets and pillows and snacks, and then we'd be in every car had kids in it. But the Beltranes, they would sell tamales, frijoles, all kinds of food you could buy there. And then the back of the salon was the wash. And if the parents wanted us to stay in the cars, they would tell us, cuidado con la llorona, porque va a salir, you know, so la llorona is the crying woman, right? It's no kids. So anyway, it's a great Mexican folklore from la llorona. So we stayed away from the arroyo. But it was really a lot of fun of gathering things. And then when we did get to dance, it was the girls dancing with the girls because there weren't that many boys. Until the Granillos came.
Oh, yes, the Granillo boys, the brothers.
Right.
We finally had dance partners. We finally had dance partners.
How many times did you dance with them, Molly?
I don't want to talk about that.
You're not in the hot seat right now.
Was it Alex? Was it Tony? Was it Louis? Was it Bernie?
They were also good looking.
They were good looking.
I don't want that, your story to end about the Harsha dance without mentioning Pancho Lopez and his saxophone.
Oh,
He was excellent. He did.
That's right.
Played it many times.
I think you should come up and sit with us, Molly. As same as Bill Bashir and Linda Brooks, who, by the way, is her birthday today, and Linda Brooks was my 4-H. And you were also my 4-H sewing teacher. And the Bashirs were our neighbors just down the road. And so, you know, a lot of connections right here in this room.
Right.
And great parents. And Rose worked with, your mom worked with Emma at Peskin, so we go back along the way.
Cynthia, wait a minute. Cynthia, when the Box were here, you were telling a story about somebody who got shot and thrown down into a hole. Can you tell more about that?
Well, I think that's a whole nother deal.
Oh, come on.
It's a whole other.
It really is.
It's not a fun story.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's a murder. It's a murder
Well,
story.
you got the interest of the whole audience.
That's part two.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Jade does want to do this again if you guys want it, so that story could be.
Yeah.
It will be more inclusive of people because I know that, you know, when you're old is when your Patagonia Elementary School becomes a museum. So I was looking at myself this morning going, wow, you are old, so.
Cindy and Emma mentioned the Granillo boys. But when they came to Patagonia, you know where the youth center is right now? Where that little tent shed is? They lived there. But they were great musicians. And every summer or every weekend, they would have a band and they were called the Hitchhikers. Remember that?
No, I don't.
They were great. And another thing I remember about music is the Morenos, Richard Moreno and them. They had quite a band. And we always had dances right there in the town hall where the court is now. We had dances there like once a month. Back then, Patagonia was very lively. People loved to dance. And like Cindy and Emma said, we communicated, we united with each other. And we stayed close together. And as we speak now, we're all still close because we're remembering all the memories are in our hearts. Because those memories will never be forgotten.
Our recuerdos.
Recuerdos de Patagonia.
Herman, how about you going to school up on the hill? I know your picture's in the school roster.
Right. I went to first grade at elementary school. We lived on Harshaw Road, and so it was maybe a mile to get to the schoolhouse. But one time, across from Lee Kuhn was Edith Farrell and Mike Nagy used to live there. They had some dogs. And I guess one time the dogs came after me, so I got scared. And my dad arranged for the little bus from the valley to pick me up and take me to school. But I remember one time Blaine Lewis was driving down the road, and right there where the RV park is, that's our little place there on Harshaw Road. But one time Blaine Lewis picked me up. He said, "Are you going to school?" I said, "Yeah." So hop in. So he gave me a ride. But I remember the most wonderful memories about Blaine Lewis and that house was the spring. He would drive the mares, the brood mares, down to where the trailer park is now, where there used to be an alfalfa field. And so he would bring about a dozen mares driving down Harshaw Road, and then just put them in that pasture, and then they would drop their foals. And that was I liked the smell of alfalfa, and you could see the horses there, and all that. So that was one of the memories of my childhood. I don't remember too much. If you go up to the museum, you can read my report card in one of the rooms there that our curator has.
You got very good grades in deportment.
I had pretty good grades, but I was not an English speaker. I was everybody spoke Spanish, and also my grandmother. I have a picture of her I brought with me today. They called her. Her name was Francisca Quiroga, but she was an Opata Indian. So a lot of the words that that I learned are probably Opata words, like Wiko was probably a lizard, and Chukata was gum. Chiwi was turkey.
Yeah, we use those words too.
Chiwi,
So anyway, those were so I knew a combination of Spanish and probably Opata.
Yeah.
And she lived, she met my grandmother lived behind Murphy Music's house there in a little cave, a little huki. According to Gary Damnat, huki is a cave, and that's sure enough, that's where my grandmother lived with her four children. They're from the Ochoa family. She married, ¿cómo se llama? Balvino Ochoa, and she had 4 children. Her oldest, Amelia, is the one, she and her husband built Locas Pool Hall here behind us. And they lived in a cave, a little huki, right, that's what she called it. And then my grandfather was probably living at the Duquesne house with his parents and 2 brothers, and that's probably where my grandfather spied my grandmother after she became a widow, and they married, and it became, they brought forth 6 children, and my dad, Ramon, was the youngest. My dad was the youngest elected town council member at the time. I think he was just barely turned 21 in 1950 when they had the first election for town council. And that's why that road there where the senior center is, 100 Quiroga Lane, is named after my father. My sister, after my grandmother Francisca died, it was followed by her sister-in-law's death, Maclovia Quiroga. They were sister-in-laws, but they were like sisters. If you read My Beloved Land by Patricia Martin Preciado, Patricia Preciado Martin, Joe Quiroga tells a story about his mother and my grandmother, that they were like sisters. They were married to 2 brothers, Ramon, my grandfather, and Joaquin, her husband. So basically, after Maclovia died and Francisca died, my sister Selena, wrote to the town council and asked the town council to change the name of Santa Rita, which is the little alley behind Duquesne here, which is where my grandma Chica and Maclovia lived for some time there in Murphy Music's and Kate Music's house there. But the town council says, no, it's already called Santa Rita, but we've got this little piece of roadway that needs a name, so how about right here in the middle of town? So that's how the town named Quiroga Lane. But my dad was, like I mentioned, on the town council in 1950. I think Dr. Mock was on the town council, Pancho Lama, and it might have been maybe your dad, Ray Bergier, I can't recall. But might have been. But my dad, he lived in where Anna Mahalik lives now. My dad built 3 houses here in Patagonia. the house on Santa Rita, he built in 1948 for his mother, right after he finished high school, and